Welcome to Broadcast Astrology, Insight for Humans.
This is Lisa Pesnichek.
And I'm Sarah Beckner, and we're here to deep dive into the fascinating world of astrology.
We offer blind chart readings, interviews with notable guests, and much more.
So keep listening as we bring you Insight for Humans. Hello, we're back this month, continuing our relationship theme, and Lisa and I are going to be discussing various ways to work with couples charts this month. So we'll look at composite charts and talk about different ways to explore relationships through the lens of astrology. We're going to start today by talking about composites, which it's a new technique. I think the first text written on composite charts was in the early 70s. There was an astrologer, John Townley, who developed and evolved the technique and started putting the materials out there to educate astrologers. And basically, a composite chart is a chart where we're using the midpoint method to create a third chart and look at the relationship as an independent identity of its own. We have our own natal chart, then we come together and we create this third entity. And so each relationship really tells a story of its own. It has its own mission, it has its own requirements in terms of how it needs to be tended, nurtured, cultivated, inspired. So we're going to look at some charts and talk about all those things. And let's dive in.
Okay, so before we dive in, some people might not have an intuitive idea of what a midpoint is. Should we just explain real quick
Sure,
what that
go
is?
for it.
So I'll just give the example of the sun, for instance. So say that we have one person's sun at one position, another person's sun at another position. And what this method will do is it'll find the point that lies in between the two of those, one person's sun and the other person's sun. And what these composite charts do is they do this for all of the planets, the angles, the houses within a chart. And that's how we get this composite chart. So it's really a symbolic chart in that the way that planets are configured, they actually were never configured like that in the sky. It's really a mashup with these midpoints of these two people's energies, these two people's stories or blueprints that they came into the world with. And it's really important to remember that it is this symbolic representation of that. And it can respond to transits, which is great because you can put the transits on and see how the transits are impacting the relationship from this perspective. But you can't look at things such as other layers of timing that we might use. But the transits, you can use that.
Right. It's really just blending the two charts. And as such, you'll find that there's a certain amount of synastry between one person might naturally find that certain facets of the relationship are easier or more challenging than the other person's. We can look at dynamics between the individual natal charts and this third entity of relationship. And I love that so much in a clinical setting because it really allows you to address some of the strengths and challenges that each person is experiencing within the context of the relationship and how they might work with those things to fulfill the mission and the purpose of the relationship in a meaningful way.
Yeah. It's a great way to look at what's important in the relationship. And like you said, different energies in the relationship. I like that view that if there's a prominent Uranus in the composite chart, but one person has a really challenging relationship with Uranus and the other person doesn't, then the person who has a challenging relationship with Uranus could find that the relationship is unpredictable and destabilizing. And that might be something that they're working through in the relationship as well. So just an example of that.
We
I was
know that astrology aside, each person is going to have their own developmental pressures within the context of the relationship. But it's a
exactly.
really neat thing to look at the astrology to see how that shows up.
Yeah. And to put it out there that any astrologer who's going to pull up a composite chart or a chart like this would first have a really good understanding of each individual natal chart and understanding of what those energies are, what those challenges are, and also how using synastry, which is a comparison of the two individual natal charts first, looking at how they're interacting with one another.
Right. So, when we look at the composite chart, I assume anyone that's listening knows that these planetary bodies all represent different facets of self and different aspects of our life. And for the most part, when we look at composite charts, it's very similar, but also unique in its own way. So, we could look at the planets. For example, we could take a planet like Venus to describe what the relationship might require in areas of love or security or things around money or sensual pleasures or artistic pleasures or what the relationship needs in terms of security. So, if a couple comes into a consultation with particular questions, too, that is one way to go into it, is just think about which planet best speaks to what they're grappling with. If there are ideological differences or differences in religion, spirituality, look and see where that Jupiter is at, or we might look at where Neptune's at. And always going back to this idea that the relationship needs to live into the fullest expression of its chart in a way, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, you want to dive in and pull up some charts?
Sure. I have mine and my husband's up right now. Should we put
Sure.
that up? And I guess one thing that before we really dive in here is one thing that came to my mind is that even before I knew about composite charts, being married for as long as I have, once you're together long enough, it almost feels like there's a separate entity that's been created between the two of you, which is the relationship. And I really see these composite charts as being that living thing that's created once two people come together and form this bond with one another. And also, just to say that there are composite charts for everybody in your life. This doesn't just have to be love relationships, it can also be your children, it can be your friends, it can be your business partners. So, just to understand that this isn't only romance centered, that it's also based on any relationship that you have.
Yeah. And thinking about it that way emphasizes the need to tend to the relationship as its own thing, you know? I mean, sometimes when people come for a reading, when couples come and you're looking at synastry, oftentimes it's this kind of side by side thing of, is this the right person for me?
Mm.
Can we cohabitate? Can we live side by side in a relatively satisfying, peaceable way? But when you look at these composites, you're really saying, oh, we could nurture the relationship by doing this. We could push ourselves out into the world and inspire others in this way. We could have more joy and have more vitality and more energy in the relationship by cultivating the sun. So it's a lot of fun. I love composite charts.
Yes, definitely. So, this is my composite chart with my husband, Jeremiah. And for anybody who doesn't even know anything about astrology, you look at this chart and be like, what's happening in that second house? You can see right here is number two in the second house. There's obviously a lot going on here. There's a financial focus to our relationship, essentially, is what it's saying. And there's Uranus is rising with the ascendant, indicating that there's some sort of potentially entrepreneurial or different sort of path that we're taking as a couple that's financially focused. And with Jupiter conjunct the midheaven, we're very optimistic about what we're doing, but it's square Neptune. So maybe sometimes there's some squirrely roads or some overly optimistic paths that we take that can get us into some edgy places. And without giving you too many details, that is essentially what our relationship has turned out in the more long term. We started our relationship in also starting a company, starting a business. And we've done that several times. And our relationship has largely been taking risks to create financial stability and creating these businesses.
So, can I ask you some questions about this chart?
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, one of the things for those who have been listening, they probably know I gravitate towards traditional astrology techniques, and this is not a traditional methodology. So, in my own practice, I've been trying to tease out can we overlay some traditional techniques on these charts and does it work? And one of the things with your chart, just looking, this composite is a balsamic moon phase. And
Mhm.
so I'm wondering if that speaks to something in terms of the origin story of your relationship with your husband. Does it make sense to you that you started in this lunation? Do you feel anything on that level?
I think that all in all, like, as a couple, we're more of an introverted couple to some degree, and as far as how our relationship began,
Because the new
yeah,
moon seems so subjective to me and much more, well, I mean, this is the dark night. There's not a lot of clarity. There's not a lot of visibility.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting, it's in a sextile to Uranus, square to Pluto. Yeah, each of us was taking a chance, and things moved pretty quickly, but also I know for myself, I was shedding a lot of who I thought I was and where I thought I was going to some degree, and became open to something else that was new, inspiring, but also had no idea where it was going.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so much Capricorn too. You have the moon, the
Mhm.
sun, and Venus all in Capricorn. Can you say something about how that shows up within the relationship as perhaps the need to achieve, to work together, to accomplish something, to build something of lasting value?
Well, I think that is a corroborative element of the second house emphasis, as well as the second house ruler being in the 10th house of creating legacy. Also, the ruler of the first house being in the 10th house, creating legacy. And yeah, largely what the trajectory of my husband's and my focus is to create long-term wealth for our family and a stable and financially resourceful foundation for our kids to stand upon as well.
Mhm.
So
And then,
there's a lot of earth in this composite chart, I would say, because there's also the Virgo element as well.
mhm, yes. And what do you make of that sun and moon squaring Pluto?
Well, I think that we've just had a lot of deep stuff to work through. I think we've had a lot of layers to peel off, which I think is also indicated by that vulnerable balsamic moon. There has been a chapter in our marriage thus far where we had to peel away parts of ourselves in order to move forward into the next part of our relationship. And I think that both of us have a tendency to be controlling to some degree. We both have very strong Plutos in our natal charts, and figuring out how to navigate some of that Pluto dynamic. I think that Pluto, as far as our charts go, also with my composite charts with my kids, is very strong. Pluto is a very big part of my natal signature, my husband's natal signature, and also my children. Most of my children have some strong Pluto signatures too. So,
Mhm. Plutonian family. Okay, before you get rid of this chart, one of the other things I'm thinking about is just how relevant the houses are. Because, like you said, this chart is a fiction on some level anyway. With the blending, can we really bring
mhm.
in the locational houses? So, let me ask you a question about, let's see, we'll take a planet. How about Mars in the ninth house? Mars in Virgo in the ninth house. So Mars in the composite chart says something about what the relationship requires in terms of courage, energy, passion, how you will push yourself out in the world, what motivates you, like a lot of where the drive and energy in the relationship is coming from. So do you see that as, do you really feel that Mars in Virgo in terms of service, refinement, the work of daily living, the rhythms, the routines? Or do you see that Mars really in that ninth house, that there's an element in terms of how you function that really is about exploration, seeking, learning, growing, putting yourself in the larger order of things, all of those ninth house kinds of topics
I
about
think I
distilling
think
some truth?
The Virgo part, I don't think works so well. Honestly, we just need a Virgo person to take care of all of the financial stuff in like our life in general. But I definitely see that Mars being more like an educational drive, a drive for our children's education as well, which that Mars also rules the fifth house. A lot of the financial push that we make as a couple really has to do with our kids' education and putting them through good schools and making sure that they have all of the educational and developmental, emotional, and all of that support as we can give them.
Yeah. And on that note, Jupiter is all about expansion, abundance, and requirements in terms of learning, adventure. And it's up there at the very top of your chart. It's the highest planet in the chart. So, yeah, it
We're
definitely
big
feels like,
dreamers.
yeah, big dreamers, dreaming. Yes.
Most people would be very uncomfortable with the way that we organize our life. I think that there's a lot in our relationship that feels like we can do whatever we put our minds to. And sometimes there's repercussions to that, but I don't think that we really care because we really believe in the larger dream of our goals in the world. And we do best in our relationship when we have a goal to work towards. When we don't have a goal to work towards, that's a bad sign for us. We need to have that, which is kind of Capricornian as well. In our charts together, that's where some of our deepest synastry lands is in that Capricorn realm, which is what's our plan? What's our tangible goals? How are we going to get from here to there?
Yeah. Even as you say that, you're talking about the Earth in the chart, but also Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. You have Mercury in Aquarius, as well as South
Hmm.
Node and the part of fortune. And so there is a lot of this kind of Saturn thing in your chart about wanting to build and create something and
Hmm.
secure yourselves. And yes, yeah,
And
this
that
is very
Saturn's in the
much.
10th house.
Mm,
It's in good dignity up there too, if we take that into account.
mm. And it, yeah, yeah, sextile to the ascendant is nice as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, I told you one last question, but I have another question. Because one of the things that I'm still on the fence about is how much to pull in the lunar nodes. So, do
Mhm.
you have a sense, because you don't have a ton of fire in this chart, but
Mm-mm.
you do have North Node and Leo? Do you feel that there's some thrust of this relationship that is pushing towards those Leo aims?
I don't know. I don't feel the signs in this so much. I think that the house placement is really the biggest part because it's between the second and the eighth house, the financial houses. So I think that's another statement that we are making sacrifices to some degree within our second house, or that there's this relationship between the house of finance to the house of like day-to-day finance, that sort of thing, to investments and building those investments and building the available finances for our children. I think that's just a huge part of that.
Mm,
So,
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
I don't know Jeremiah so well, but I've known you for a while, and this chart just seems a powerful chart and really speaks to my sense of your relationship.
Should we bring yours up now?
Sure.
Okay. So what's interesting is that while my husband and I have the focus on the second house, Sarah and her partner have a focus on the eighth house, which is still a financial house, but there's also kind of more of this psychological embeddedness between the two of you. I wonder if the two of you can just read one another's mind to some degree, if there's maybe not a lot of explanation that you have to provide to one another.
Yeah, it makes me think about Stephen Forrest's work on that, on love and relationships. And he talks about eighth house is the till death do us part or not. It's the all
Yeah.
in house
Yes.
and the deep merging of self and resources and all of it. And in my case, in this chart, you see a stellium in Sagittarius, and things happened really quickly with my husband. I mean, it was very Sagittarian, all in, rapid fire. And early on, based in large part around a mutual dream to pack up our lives and travel. And so we knew each other for probably 3 months, got married, closed up shop, and went down to South America. And there is a big component where we really do meet each other on that level of seeking and exploration. And I feel like that very much still exists, even though we've had children and things are much more established. We've lived in a home the longest we've ever lived in a house since 2014, but we would throw it away on a dime, go reinvent ourselves and to explore and to have an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, so you really feel that Sagittarius part. I wonder what's at 11 degrees Sagittarius in like your chart and his chart and your kid's chart. You have Neptune, Mercury, and the sun all at 11 degrees Sag in your composite chart, which means that there's something just from a midpoint work. There's something really important about that degree and sign for your family, for your relationship. And I almost wonder, as planets transit that part of the zodiac, that would be a really interesting deep dive because it's so pronounced that everything's meeting there.
Yeah, that would be fascinating because, to be honest, I don't work with my own chart or chart
I know,
very
right?
much because I'm in everybody else's business, but monitoring transits to the composite would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Just keep an eye on that.
Yeah. It just really pops out at me. And especially being in the eighth house, too, it looks like there's this vulnerability within your relationship where, again, I almost feel like words don't need to be said. Or maybe you guys almost have your own language between the two of you. Or maybe there's just this psychic knowing that doesn't need typical words. Mercury, Neptune, especially in Sagittarius, it's a very sky's the limit thinking between the two of you. But also, there's a deep psychological, metaphysical landscape, it looks like that the two of you live in. And it looks dreamy, honestly.
I love that. That was beautiful, Lisa. That's well said. And I think this is one of those pieces of this composite chart that really suit me because I have natal Neptune in my seventh house. So that's already
Mhm.
something I was looking for, something I was seeking.
Yeah.
And I found it in the context of this relationship. I also think all of this Sagittarius energy just suits our family dynamic really well. We all have moons in fire. And so
Mhm.
basically, all four of us, our natal moons trine this composite chart, if you will. So I think in terms of family, the moon as the universal significator of family and all of us having fire moons, that there's
Mhm.
something about us creating this family together. There's a synastry there that was advantageous for that.
Yeah. Knowing that you guys have been together for so long and that it's a strong, stable relationship. I mean, as much as we can find strong, stable relationships in marriage and life being crazy, there is the potential of lies and deception with Mercury, Neptune. But I almost wonder because it's in the eighth house that if one of you tried to pass one over on the other one, that
They couldn't get
this
away with it.
they could not get away with it, especially with Pluto in the seventh house. There's some laser third eye knowing between the two of you. I work with a lot of clients who are involved in psychic practices and that sort of thing. And this to me has some sort of a past life element to it. Like that eighth house and Pluto, while there can be more traumatic and challenging parts to it, when these elements are approached in a higher elevated way, or even with when they're not, there's still this past life element. Oh, it's almost like the two of you agreed to be together on the other side before you came into this lifetime together. there was a plan in place where you were going to walk hand in hand with one another, raise this family, and create this life with one another. And it just looks like there was a pre-agreement ahead of time.
I agree with you. I feel that. And what's so funny is we've had this kind of ongoing joke. He would always tell me, I just signed off for till death do us part. Like I signed the marriage contract, the paper till death do us part. And now these last year, he's like, okay, maybe you can have a little extra time. But as I look at this chart too, something I didn't initially consider was just thinking about Saturn as a place where there can be obstacles, delays,
Yeah.
things come later in the house of children.
Hmm.
Saturn in general within a composite chart representing what the relationship requires through work, commitment, responsibility, and mastery.
Yeah.
And we were married for, I think it was 9 years before we became parents.
Hmm.
And it didn't happen readily either when we decided we wanted to go down that road. There were some challenges, there were some miscarriages and things. It took some time. So I definitely can feel that fifth house Saturn as well.
29th degree and sign of its detriment.
Yeah. And that's something I wonder about the anaretic degree in a composite chart
Yeah, I
because
don't
your
know.
sun was at the anaretic degree in your
Yeah,
composite
it
chart.
was. Hmm.
And
Now, I
yeah.
feel like the more I look at these charts, the more questions I have, like you're saying, about what can we actually speak to and what can we actually not speak to.
Mhm.
But I think that it is interesting. If we were to look at a natal chart with Saturn in the fifth house, we might say that children were delayed, that having children was something that came with more effort than other people. And that is your story, that you guys waited a while, that it was a process to get to the point where actually could have a child. And it's also square the ruler of your relationship. Like that on its own is something that this relationship was set up to work through. That was part of a challenge that's create obstacles, but also make you stronger as individuals and also within your relationship.
And if I was my own client, I might say something about how our need in terms of this relationship's requirement for expansion, abundance,
Mhm.
continued learning and travel that has been thwarted in somewhat by children. I think
Yeah.
the square speaks to that. So,
Yeah. Well, you guys already had this whole agreement with one another and you guys traveled with one another. You guys created many different worlds and realities with one another. And you knew you wanted children, but it wasn't an easy flowing thing. It was like eating the metaphorical broccoli, the thing that you knew you wanted to do, that you knew would be good for you, but it just came with a lot of difficulties. And probably children, they're the greatest blessings that we can have. The Saturn is also trine your ascendant, but
mhm. Oh,
so there's
exactly.
exactly, yeah. But there's also something in it where it needed to happen in order for the relationship to fulfill its mission, essentially.
Yeah. And I always think there are a lot of philosophies and traditions where it's all about the work being the medicine. If you look at
Mhm.
in Kabbalistic studies, they talk about where we feel the most resistance, that is our personal work in this life. And doing that work is our greatest satisfaction. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm not deterred by the Saturn. I think
No way.
it is the hardest thing we've tackled together and the
Mhm.
most rewarding thing for
Of
sure. And
course.
also the thing that binds us because I think there's that facet to Saturn too, that we do this great work together.
Yeah,
And yeah.
I love that. And one last piece about this that I just think is lovely that reaffirms that we are definitely in a composite chart that is reflecting love, that's reflecting partnership, is we have Venus at the very top of the chart conjunct the MC, which is saying, even though there's all this eighth house stuff going on, it's just saying that there's grounded love in the midst of what looks like potential turbulence or psychological difficulty, which isn't the case. And if this Venus weren't up here, that might change the picture. Like if this were Saturn up here, that might change the picture of this chart, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
There's a really big statement about this Venus being at the top of the chart saying this is a love chart. This is a chart about two people being together. And because of that, you would read what looks like it could be kind of a dark night of the soul relationship, really being something that are two spirits coming together, materializing in this human form together and walking this path of life together and knowing each other on a level that is deeper than humans in our current human state can actually perceive. Like there's something deeper happening within your relationship and how you're raising your kids and the contributions that each of you are making in your work that's making a much bigger difference than you guys probably could ever understand in being a human.
Oh, yes, I would like to think so.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah. It's beautiful. All right. Well, I think that we had some other stuff that we wanted to pull into this, but I think we're about at our time. Sarah, is there anything you want to throw in these last couple minutes?
This would be a fun thing to do actually live, Lisa, if you were up for it. If
Yeah.
somebody wanted us to, bounce around their composite chart, again, it doesn't have to be romantic. We could look
No.
at parent child, we could look at siblings, we could look at boss employee,
Hmm.
and continue this discussion. It would be fun to look at a fresh chart and get some feedback, especially as you and I continue to research and explore, like, what can we really trust using our techniques? What doesn't apply so much? And continue the study.
Yeah. And if we pick this up again, I would love to also take a look at the Davison relationship charts. They're different representation of the relationship chart that we just covered, these composite charts, but there's a more realistic representation of the chart. So it's just like astrology, right? There's a million ways to look at one thing, but just to put that out there that there's lots of ways to look at this and it might be a fun future episode as well.
Yeah.
But
And those are anchored in space time. So it would be
yeah,
fun to do a little compare contrast between the Davidson and the composite.
yeah, I found it really interesting because you can use a lot more timing techniques with it as well. So, all right, Sarah, it was fun to do this deep dive with you further into relationships and love, as well as how astrology looks at two people coming together and what does that look like? What are these underlying agendas that our souls have with one another when we agree to be in relationship with one another? And Sarah, it'd be interesting to look at what ours looks like with one another as
Oh, yeah,
well.
we should. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking we will continue the theme of relationships because we're going to
Yeah.
come back next month and we'll be talking about children's charts.
Yeah. Children and family dynamics. We're going to have Catherine Urban on and really excited to have her join us next month. And we can't wait to see you then. And thanks for joining us as usual. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Next time. Bye.
As always, thanks for listening to Broadcast Astrology Insight for Humans. If you're so inclined, like, follow, and subscribe, and don't be a stranger.
Signing off for now. Until next time, humans, keep your gaze upwards on the stars and be well. We look forward to sharing more soon.